All right, I'm going to call our council meeting to order, and our first item of business is to have a motion to excuse Councillor Hammergren. Ellen will make that motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The minutes of the meeting of September the 6th. Are there any concerns? Or Anne-Marie?
Motion to approve the minutes.
A motion to approve the minutes, to adopt the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Post agenda items.
Madam Reeve, I have one in camera. Land matter.
Okay. Any other post agenda items? Can I get a motion to adopt? Brian moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 6, I don't believe there's anything, no notice of motion or questions today. So we have public hearings that commence at 11:30. We also have an 11 o'clock delegation on item 9 on our agenda, so we'll get right to that. So we'll ask Ashley to come forward and tell us about the Brooks Local Immigration Partnership. And we will do some introductions again as well. So Ashley, there's a button on the side of your mic, or maybe it is turned on for all I know. It might just be talk at the front maybe. Anyhow, we will do introductions, and we'll start at the back with our famous Brooks Bulletin reporter.
I'm Sandra with the Brooks Bulletin.
And we'll move to Lane.
Hi, I'm Lane Johnson, Director for Corporate Services.
Hello, Ariana Nielsen, Executive Assistant.
Ellen Undra, and I represent the countryside around the village of Rosemary.
Good morning, Tracy Fife, Division 5, Southwest around the area of Brooks.
Morning, Ashley. I am Kelly Chrisman from Division 6, the west side of the county.
Welcome, Ashley. I'm Kevin Stevenson, County Administrator.
Hello again, Ashley. We've met before, so you know who I am.
Good morning, Clarence Amelin, and I live in Rolling Hills.
Good morning, Ashley. Anne-Marie Phillipson, Patricia area.
Brian DeJong, represent the area around the Village Duchess.
Good morning, Ashley. Hugh Kellen, Tilly area, Division 2.
Good morning, Lionel Just, and I'm an area north and east of Brooks.
We also have some guests in our gallery, so we'll have them tell us who they are. And Ashley, you can introduce yourself and take it away.
Okay.
Oh, it's got to have the red on to be on.
Oh, it was on. There. Thank you for having me here today. I'm just going to do a really short presentation. Basically, I wanted to connect with you all, explain a little bit about my project, and also start with the inviting for an upcoming forum that our partnership initiative is going to be having next month. So again, my name is Ashley Dyken. I'm the coordinator of a project called Brooks Local Immigration Partnership. This project is funded solely through IRCC, which is Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. Basically, what the project is, it's a community-based initiative which brings together diverse stakeholders to support the settlement and integration of newcomers. The intention being that settlement and integration doesn't just happen at a settlement-serving agency such as BCIS, but it's actually a community-level process. Newcomers come and they become residents of our communities of the region, so they live and work in our community. So they experience very different organizations, from schools to the government, services, banks, employers. All these things interact to be a part of that settlement process. The intention is that everyone comes together towards a similar goal, which is to build more welcoming and inclusive communities. In thinking of why we build these types of communities, it's important to think about our future. Immigration brings economic growth and vitality to the region, particularly for the agriculture and oil and gas sectors. The future is something that we are focusing on for our upcoming forum, which I will mention a little bit later. But first I wanted to say that up until this point, the project has focused solely on Brooks and the city of Brooks. But we recognize the impact and the presence of immigration in the county, both now and throughout generations, as you all know that many farmers that came to this region were immigrants themselves. So I wanted to come here today to meet with all of you, get to know you a little bit, hear some of your thoughts, and see how the project can work together with the county as a whole. I just wanted to start by sharing what we've done with the project so far, so you're up to date with what we're working on, and then I'll turn it over to you if you have any questions for me. So basically the partnership is, I always joke, a lot of meetings, but we have various different groups which come together. The largest of which is called the Partnership Council, and this group meets quarterly and has representatives from various organizations. And I hope perhaps one of the outcomes of today is we have someone from council or a rotation of people from council from the county who is able to sit on that as well, so we can include the county in that information sharing. So this group meets 4 times a year. We have various service organizations and employers on there. We have JBS, for example, SPEC, BCIS, the RCMP, Grasslands, Christ the Redeemer, École de Rousseau, so a wide variety of organizations on that group. From that group, I also have an executive committee, and this committee is to help steer the project. I am the coordinator of the project, but we want it to be community level, so not just me making the decisions, a group of people. So we have that executive committee that meets fairly regularly to help guide the direction of the project. We've also just recently formed working groups. So we have a strategic plan, which is a community settlement strategy, and we've identified 3 priority areas of focus that we'd like to focus our current work on. Those working groups, very briefly, are English language learning and education, social isolation and social inclusion, and youth aged 15 to 24, as this group was identified as a high needs group. We also have what's called an immigrant advisory group. So we want to promote the two-way street level of integration, whereas it's not the receiving society or the immigrant's sole focus to be the only one doing the settlement and integration, but it's a two-way street and both parties have a responsibility. So that said, we have an immigrant advisory group which consists of currently 12 individuals who have that lived experience as an immigrant, and they provide feedback and information to the project as well. So as I mentioned, we have done a strategic plan and we're working on an action plan for that. So we've identified our 3 areas of focus. Now we're starting with the working groups to look at how we can address these 3 priority issues. We've also done research. So we did a community research project last fall, identifying needs and gaps in the community. We also do some information sharing and a few events. The partnership does a yearly welcome event. As well, we're a part of Alberta Culture Days. I did something small last year, and this year we're putting something small in again. And we're also hosting a Southeastern Alberta Diversity Inclusion Forum on October 24th, and I'd cordially like to invite all of you to attend this forum. It's going to be free, of course, and it's going to be a full-day forum. We're currently finalizing our agenda, and formal invitations will be following within the next week or so, so please check your emails for that. So far, we have 2 keynote speakers. As well, we're going to be having an employer panel featuring employers who have had successes hiring newcomers. We're also going to have some cultural storytelling. So some people who have had a unique story of settling here in Canada are going to be sharing their experiences. And we're hoping to get a few breakout sessions as well. Lunch will be included and lots of refreshments. My planning committee is to reflect the project, very diverse. So we're going to try and inject that diversity and culture into the whole day. It should be really fun, so I am hoping that all of you will be able to attend. And that's basically all I had to say on the project, but I'd like to open it up. If any of you have any questions for me on the project, any interest, please let me know right now.
Questions? Ellen?
Just wondering, the new immigrants, how do they get in contact with you? Or do you go, how do you know they're immigrating, for example? And another question is the agriculture immigration. Could you elaborate a little on that?
Sure. I'll answer the first question first. So I have previously worked here in Brooks as a settlement worker and with temporary foreign workers. So I do tend to utilize some of my existing network. For better, for worse, that's one of the best ways to get into contact with people in this community. I also use a lot of snowball recruiting. So if I know someone, I'll talk to them and say, hey, I have this project. Do you have any friends that might be interested? And connect people that way. I've also connected with several of the ethnocultural group leaders from the Somali Association, the South Sudanese, the Filipino Association, to try and connect with those leaders. And I also work very closely with BCIS and SPEC. So those are some of the ways that I connect with people. I also do have advertisements I try to get out. I put them in all the ethnocultural stores. I have Facebook and Twitter. Not everyone uses them, but it is another avenue where we advertise. There's definitely a lot more that we could do to be connecting, but it's our starting place and hoping to grow that from there. And to speak a little more about the agricultural sector and immigration, as I mentioned, I did used to work helping temporary foreign workers understand pathways to permanent residency. A lot of them are agricultural workers, whether it's at JBS or honey. I know the honey facilities, Scandia Honey and Philpott also employ temporary workers. There are seasonal workers. And then throughout history, there are people that have come to the region to settle, build farms. The Mexican Mennonites are now returning more so to the region. So there's lots of immigrants who are employed in the agricultural sector or have background experience in that sector. I met someone from the Philippines once. He was forgive me if I say it wrong, I think he was a swine technician. So he had that experience back in the Philippines and then came to Canada and began working at a pork production facility, working with the piglets and that type of work. So it's really unique that people have that experience that they can bring. These are in-demand jobs in our region. So it's really interesting to see how our needs also meet the needs of people who are coming there. They have that skill set and they have that interest. So it's important to recognize that connection and see how it can be beneficial for all parties.
Ashley, this is a federally funded project, and is it funded for so many years at a time?
Yes, so it follows the typical funding cycle from IRCC. We currently are in the second year of a 3-year funding model. There will be a new call for proposal in the fall, so in the year 2020, the contract can be renewed. I know that's a deterrent for a lot of people sometimes because the fear is that the funding is there for a short time period and then afterwards it's done. I do know that IRCC really likes LIPs and they're really trying to promote these projects. Currently there is about 80 across the country and they're trying to grow them because they see it as a feasible way to help solve some of the gaps that they have. I believe the report is that only 40% of newcomers that come to Canada access settlement services. So they're really interested in connecting to those people that don't to find out how they find out what they need and how it is working on the community level. So I am fairly confident that the LIP project will continue. It's also developed in a way that if the funding does get pulled for whatever reason, that we're hoping that the model can be set up to function in a way that it can continue even without the coordinator or the funding. So that's why we have working groups and it's the hardest thing for me to do, but I always stress that it's a partnership. It's not just me, it's everyone around the table. So if we get that interest in people to keep talking about how settlement and integration are a big thing in this region, then hopefully the lasting impact will go longer than any funding.
It's an interesting model, and good that there's the whole concept of the sustainability of the concept, at least.
Yeah.
Good. I don't see anything else from people, so, Clarence.
It's always been intriguing to me that in today's society we need to do this in an organized type of way. I know there's people sitting around the table that came, and there was nothing like that available, including myself. And look what happened. Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, that we now have to draw our community in to help people that are new to her. And in years gone by, that happened automatically. But my question is, and maybe it happens better when you're just the one little island and nobody else is like you, but if people come over more and they have their like groups, is there a tendency to stick together with fellow immigrants and not? Is that causing perhaps some of our difficulties? Like that groups are staying together and not merging? And I look at, we didn't have a choice, you know. You spoke English, and if you didn't, you said, well, what is this? I can remember going to school and somebody said, you got an eraser? What the heck is an eraser? You know, and so somebody showed me, oh yeah, I got one of those, and I just didn't call it an eraser. But so I mean, when you're it's kind of interesting that in today's society that we have to do this, and when in the past it just kind of was part of what happened. Am I totally wrong in assuming that, or is?
Sorry about that. No, those are good comments and very true comments as well. Sometimes I talk with my mother. My mother's parents were immigrants themselves, so she talks about how different it was for them than today. And I agree, there is a concern about when newcomers come, and they tend to, we call it ethnic enclaves or diasporas, especially in larger cities, grouping together rather than integrating. And that's why we do promote the two-way street model. It is important to build a community where people want to be welcomed, but it's also important to encourage newcomers to take that extra step as well. A lot of times it's that security feeling. So they find people who have that like language, the like experience, the like cultural values. And for a lot of people, they do tend to go inward, and it can be a problem. There are studies where health and things like that are actually affected when people just stay within their own community because they don't learn the language, and it makes it more difficult for them to access services. They tend to be more housebound, and these can have detrimental effects to their health. So there are studies that suggest that, you know, some groups may have originally said, okay, it's good for them to join it up. And at first it is good because then they can find that friend that can help them out. But if they do want to do the integration part, then it is important to get outside of that community because that can hinder integration themselves because, you know, they're not getting out. And there's projects like SPEC's Hippie program, which is actually a home visitation program because they've identified that there are some women who just stay in the home and they never ever leave. And so they've actually developed a program where they can go into the home, start building capacity with these women because it can be a negative impact if they're just staying at home. So that's why we do try and promote that two-way street model, and that's why social isolation, social inclusion were one of our identified priorities. It's definitely a really hard thing to debate and to carry out because a lot of people have strong opinions one way or the other, a lot of blaming to other sides. I personally don't like to lay blame on anyone. I always promote the idea, you know, we need to take that initiative, but we also need to make it easier for people. I talk to a lot of immigrants, especially with my advisory group. They're a very vocal group. I've recruited very well. And they tell me sometimes that people do want to go out, but they haven't had that warm welcome and they've kind of felt excluded, so then they just revert back into their own groups. We want to promote ways to stop that from happening. Well, it's like, to summarize, it is good for them to have their own community so they can keep their language and culture, but it's also good for them to get out, meet people from other ethnicities or languages or backgrounds, because that in turn is going to help everyone. It's not good to isolate, and that's something that we're hoping that doesn't happen. We're already talking in Brooks in particular, because Brooks does have the larger population. People joke about Little Mogadishu. So there's a neighborhood in the Greenbrook area where a lot of people from Somalia live, and there's lots of Somali shops there. So they're starting to call it Little Mogadishu, and I was like, that's funny, but at the same time, like, we don't want that to be happening too much, because we want them to be part of the community as well, because it's better for everyone in the end. So that's actually a great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. That was good, and we'll look forward to getting your information about October 24th.
Thank you very much for having me, and I do hope you all are able to attend. It's going to be a fun day.
I have one quick question. I remember what it was now.
Sure.
BCIS, between BCIS and you, and it follows with Clarence's question, how many people are just don't get involved with anybody? Do you have any idea? Like the immigrants population?
How many people don't?
Like don't use those settlement services, or yours?
Yeah, so IRC has that stat where only 40% of newcomers access settlement services. So that means, and this is in the whole country, this isn't just in Brooks, so they average around 60% of newcomers to Canada do not access traditional settlement service agencies. So that's what they're curious about. When we did our research, we endeavored to try and reach people who hadn't gone to settlement serving agencies. I believe Mohammed said something about when you look at the numbers of newcomers to Brooks and then their numbers, some of the populations are different. So they might have a high population of Ethiopian immigrants that come to their services, but there's, let's say, 500 Filipinos, but they don't come, or there's 200 Chinese, but they've never seen a Chinese immigrant come to their office. So that's why they're saying, okay, something's happening here where these people are getting what they need, but they're not coming to the settlement service agency. So they kind of wanted to take a look at how are they getting settled, and are they getting settled?
And why?
And why.
Yeah, interesting. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to go to a different place in our agenda again, and we're going to hop to item 8.7, which is the cannabis consumption. That's what we decided, right? And so we have Tracy and Chelsea who can join us, so if they want to ask questions or listen, I hope we don't disappoint them. This is Bylaw 1930-18.
So this particular agenda item is before Council today because it was referred to joint services when it was last discussed at this Council level. The purpose in referring it to joint services was to determine what the other communities were planning on doing with regards to regulating the consumption of cannabis in public places, and it's our understanding that it was discussed during the September 11th Joint Services Committee meeting, and during that meeting the City of Brooks certainly expressed interest in making sure that there was a level playing field when it comes to regulating the consumption of cannabis in public places, and the city's position is that they are wanting to disallow it in any public places. It's also our understanding that Rosemary and Dutchess are doing likewise. From what we understand, the town of Bassano has taken the position that they're going to default to the provincial government's position when it comes to regulating cannabis consumption in public places. So on the basis of the city of Brooks having requested it, and given the fact that the Centennial Regional Arena is technically located in the county, as is the Silver Sage Arena, those are certainly public places, and the rodeo grounds are public places where if we didn't have some other higher standard, then the city's position would not necessarily be enforceable in those public facilities or around those public facilities. For that reason, we have prepared a bylaw which is before council if council is wanting to put measures in place that exceed the Government of Alberta position on regulating cannabis consumption in public places, then the bylaw is before you that would allow you to do so.
Brian.
Under the bylaw, under the definitions, C, can you clarify why it specifically talks about the Village of Dutchess Council?
That would be a typo.
Ellen.
Yeah, I read the Alberta government's position, but would it still not, if one would go with that position, would it still not be enforceable in public places? The enforcement, if we were to go with the Alberta position?
If we relied on the Government of Alberta position, it would be enforceable, yes, and it's possible that the CPOs would be able to enforce the provincial standard, but it certainly would not be a bylaw that that the county would have on the books, and we would probably not be inclined to take measures to enforce a provincial government statute. It was our understanding in preparing this bylaw that what council was wanting to do is, if there is a need to ensure that there's consistency between the municipalities, that we would all try and, as much as possible, be on the same level.
And so that's what we're here today for, and it just, I know the city expressed, or the mayor of the city expressed the desire to just keep it simple for people, because people don't recognize boundaries and things like that. So it would be quite confusing if we had some different bylaw. For us, with the number of buildings that are just on our border, that are within the county of Newell, that would have a different rule perhaps. So sticking with the basic that we don't allow it in public for consumption is what this is all about. Questions? Any questions from around the table? Any further ones? Or Claire?
So this deals with recreational cannabis, not medicinal. Is that correct?
It deals with cannabis consumption in public places. If someone has a medical approval for the use of cannabis, they would be required to produce that document to avoid the bylaw being imposed upon them in the public place.
Any other questions? Brian?
Well, it's more of a comment than a question, if that's possible, but I guess like I'm in favor of the option one, which is proceed to give first reading. I'm just curious what the capacity is from a bylaw enforcement point of view to actually follow through. It's we put bylaws in, and sometimes you look at the ability to enforce, and I think it's questionable. But that said, it's not incorrect in what we're doing. It's just the reality of how it actually evolves.
And I guess that will remain to be seen. I would ask the question, what's the enforcement been up till now? Really? And how might this change? We really don't know. If there's going to be a big jump in public consumption or, yeah. Wayne?
As with most county bylaws, we act on complaints, and it's not that we would have our CPOs actively out there patrolling for infractions. This would be on a complaint basis as well. So if calls came in that it was being used at this location at that time, they would have to then do a patrol. It's not like we would be consistently going out there looking for people that are breaking the bylaw.
All right. Does someone want to put forth the motion? Kelly will move the motion to begin the approval of a bylaw to prohibit public cannabis consumption in the county. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? And ladies, Tracy, Chelsea, you were just, I know you're involved with grasslands, and there's people might wonder, why are you here?
Sure, I can definitely speak to that. So Tracy and myself are prevention education counselors for Grasslands Public Schools, and we work with, this year it'll average about 1,500 students. We go into classrooms and we provide education, and one of our key focal points is substance abuse and use, and we also will work with students on a one-on-one basis that were suspended for substance abuse as well. We're here from the standpoint definitely to provide protective factors for our youth, and especially after you mentioned Silver Sage, CRA, and the rodeo grounds. Well, those are huge areas where our youth come for different public events, and we want to have the protective factors there where it's not necessarily in their face, and then it just raises curiosity to potential use. So for us, we definitely just want to do what we can to support the motion to go in. Yeah, just a little, yeah, a lot.
A lot, yeah. In addition to that, Chelsea and I have approached the Grassland Central Office and asked for their support for us to go into and connect with all the junior high and high school students and do a presentation alongside our CMP and hopefully the administrator of that school, and to do it as promptly as we can prior to legalization so that we can inform the students of the proper actual laws, because there's so much misconception, and so that they know the laws, they know the standpoint of the administration and the Grassland School Division, how it will be handled should they come to school impaired or have it on their being, and to also give them some accurate information. One of the things that, of course, we've continued to hear from students the last year is like, oh, well, then it must be the good stuff if they're legalizing it. So definitely want to get the message out there that just because it's legal doesn't mean it's safe, doesn't mean it's good for you. Just like the legalization, the tobacco's legal. Is it good for you? No. Is it safe to use? No. And same with alcohol, especially for youth consumption. The dangers and the risks are very high. So we want to give them that proper and correct education and understanding so that they're not kind of lost in all the myths and things. So that's where we really want it to come as well, to make sure that we were clear on what the bylaws in our area are and that we can speak to it with confidence that we have the right information. So.
Well, good for you for coming out to get it right off the press, sort of. This would be just the first reading, and so I have a feeling it won't change, by the time the readings are done. So, Kevin.
Reeve, I'll just throw one thing out. I think it's going to be really difficult to enforce. For instance, the school bans the use of cannabis. The students walk across the street to a private landowner. They're on the private landowner property, and they decide to do that to get around the rules, and it's going to be up to the landowner to try to charge with trespass or whatever they can do. So I think it's going to be really difficult to enforce it.
I can just speak to that. We have within Grasslands rules already set in place for alcohol use that you're not allowed to use on school property or be under the influence of a school property. So the actual consumption would be, yes, the landowner to call in and make a complaint, but if they were to return to school under the influence and it be obviously present and be able to either smell it or be able just to tell based off of them, then they would be suspended or whatever the school would decide at the time.
All right. No other questions then? Thanks, ladies, and I'm glad we got this done so you don't have to hang around all day.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure you've got lots to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A question, are we able, just so that we've got it and can reference back to it, a copy of what's on our screens right now about the bylaws, and is that something that's accessible, I'm assuming, for public to see and have? Where would we find it, or?
We'll have it posted on the county's website.
Okay.
But we can also email you a copy of the bylaw as well if that's what you would like to do.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Okay, it is time for a late public hearing to happen, so we will move back to item 7.2.
So just to give you an idea of what we're working with here, I put a map up. The yellow shows existing closure and lease agreements that have been completed. The red is showing what's being proposed under this bylaw. So again, the purpose of the application is to close the road allowances for lease at the locations shown on the map. This landowner is applying to close and lease the road allowances to facilitate the operation of his existing pivot irrigation systems. The lands are in Division 4, south of Scandia. Approval to proceed with the road closure and lease was provided at the July 5th council meeting. We had to redo some advertising for this one because we didn't meet the 2 consecutive weeks, and so it was bumped from the September 6th meeting to this meeting. There were no responses from any adjacent landowners as of September 15th, and nothing between then and now. Atco Gas, Altalink, and Fortis had no objections. Fortis was requesting an access easement. TELUS has not responded, so Pam has been contacting them again. County Municipal Services had no issues with closing and leasing these road allowances. So the options here are, providing that no issues arise, give first reading to this road closure bylaw 1918-18. And I invited the landowner, but I'm thinking that because it's a nice day, he's probably out in the fields.
Any questions? If not, we need a motion to move out of camera. Ellen moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried, which takes us to item 8.1, the bylaw for the first reading of this. Or second, I guess. What is this? We're out of public hearings. Yeah. For first reading. So, can we get a motion? Kelly? Kelly moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So we'll just carry on with a few more. (1913-18) is next.
So while I'm trying to get this map up here, this one is the Tilma Road closure. So we've gotten it back from Alberta Transportation, and I had a discussion with the technical person there, technician, and explained the situation with this, and Alberta Transportation has no issues with the closure and sale of this road allowance. And so this is one we discussed at the last meeting where council can give second and third reading to this, but until a title is registered at Land Titles and then given to the landowner's surveyor to do the consolidation, he does not own this title. So it's, as far as he's concerned, it's still in the same place as it's always been. It belongs to the county. So there really is no concern with that there's no agreement at this time. I would wait for the agreement to be finalized and then talk to his surveyor or provide this information to his surveyor to do the consolidation. So until that time, second and third reading happens, it goes back in my file and just waits until everything else is wrapped up.
All right. Do we have questions or a motion for second reading? Brian?
Well, the one question, and it's mostly for clarification because I think you've answered it at least once, probably a half a dozen times. That scenario that we're looking at there, is that there's no time sensitivity to that. It could sit there for theoretically for 50 years.
Correct. What I've read in the Municipal Government Act is it's after first reading, there's a limit. There's a 2-year limit that it needs to have second and third reading. So that's the limit. After we do second and third reading, it can just sit, is what my understanding. Now, is that correct? Diane is going to clarify.
The bylaw itself can sit. I would suggest that what you'd want to do is ensure that that other road diversion gets registered in a timely manner, because as we sit right now, we're in limbo between the accesses at the moment. So again, I would suggest that if something didn't happen, you may want to revisit this and reverse it if that's the case. But in order for the process to continue moving forward, you have to go through this process. So again, I think it's something we're going to monitor, but yeah, technically, once you've got the bylaw, it stays on the books for indefinitely.
So knowing that, Madam Reeve, I'd make a motion for second reading.
All right. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So motion for third reading. Anne-Marie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Go to the Hamlet of Tilly road closure and lease.
All right. This next one is, as Molly said, in the Hamlet of Tilly. It is for closure and lease. of a portion of lane on the east side of the hall, and the purpose of it is to be able to lease this piece of land to NRSWMA, which is the Newell Recycling. Is that Newell Recycling?
Solid waste management.
Solid waste management. So again, it has been returned from Alberta Transportation, and I believe this is our new record because it was given public hearing August 9th, and it was returned September 5th, so not even a month. So that's our new record with these from Alberta Transportation. So the request here is for a second and third reading, after which time we'll do the lease agreement with the company that's going to be leasing it. So the request here now is for second and third reading for this bylaw 1916-18.
Get a motion for second reading. Hubie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And for third reading, Tracy moves. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is also carried. On to the bylaw amendment, first reading for IMDP with Wheatland County.
Great. This is bylaw 1926-18. So again, it's very similar to what we did at the last meeting with regards with Vulcan County. So again, we're doing some amendments to ensure that our plans are up to date with the new Municipal Government Act and the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan. So the amendments, in summary, it's an update to the acknowledgement page, an update to the population data. We've included the new sections of the MGA regarding intermunicipal development plans. We've done some updates to some policies. They're all listed there for you. And we've deleted a couple policies for clarification's sake. We've added a section on natural environment. That's one of the changes that came in with the MGA, and a little bit light on the natural environment in some of our plans, so that's one of the sections that have been added. We've added and deleted definitions in Appendix A, and that really deals with Wheatland's involvement with the Calgary Metropolitan Board and whatever changes have been going on there. So we're trying to keep up with that. And again, Wheatland asked for updates. They've done some amendments to their land use map. Again, it was part of Map 3. So there was no land use amendments on our side, just on their side. So that's why there's amendments to the Wheatland side only. So again, Wheatland County has provided first reading to this a couple of days ago with the idea that we held a public hearing in November within a few days of each other. So again, this is to proceed to first reading just to get it into the consultation phase, and then again bring it back in November for public hearing.
All right, so we need first reading for this bylaw. Or questions? Clarence? Moving first reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Taking us to item 8.5, text amendments to the land use for two items, cannabis uses and solar installations for first reading also.
Great. This is bylaw 1929-18. So again, we had brought some, draft cannabis retail policy before MPC several months ago. Part of that was also, as the earlier discussion around cannabis consumption, getting an idea of what our neighbors within the region are doing as well. So that was a topic of discussion at the Inter-municipal development plan meeting last week. It's interesting, there's sort of a range of what people are doing. A lot of the smaller villages are just sticking with the provincial regulations. I think the City of Brooks has gone to a little more extent in ensuring there's some separation distances between the units. But overall, there's not a lot of differences between what's being proposed. So what I've brought before you is a fairly it really mimics the provincial regulations through the AGLC with the 100-meter setbacks. So again, part of the amendment includes definitions for cannabis, cannabis accessories, cannabis production facilities, and cannabis retail stores. So we are trying to, again, flip over our medical cannabis production facilities into just cannabis, because it doesn't matter if it's medical or if it's going to be recreational. We are then making some minor changes to some of our current definitions to ensure that we don't have any cross interpretations of what these types of uses are. And then we're also going to delete our current definition of a licensed medical marijuana production facility. Cannabis retail stores will be added as discretionary uses to the Hamlet Business, Rural Business, and Rural Industrial Land Use District. As well, in reviewing this, retail uses have been left out in the Rural Industrial District, so I thought it's a good time to just add that one as a discretionary use as well for a little housekeeping. The criteria for development of retail cannabis stores are pretty basic, so we've taken out a lot of the other previous suggestions, and what we're looking for with their application is we want to see their floor plans and their building information, which they would require to do with their AGLC license. We do require them to submit verification of eligibility to obtain a license. I think I may have mentioned this before, but again, when you're going forward with this, there's a two-part licensing. You have to kind of go through a pre-authorization. You have to pass your security checks, those types of things. So if you don't have that sort of first part in, there's no part trying to get a development permit. So we really want you to see that you've gone through that first, you're serious about doing this, and now let's try to pick a location. So that's what that verification of eligibility is. And again, what we do want them to do is, because we're requesting that they follow the provincial regulations with regards to being 100 meters back from a healthcare facility, school, or parcel land zoned SR or MR. We're asking them to provide us a diagram showing that they've done their homework as to where their location is in regards to these sensitive spots. So beyond that, they've only got the three sections that they'll have to move through. The final ones are having to ensure that all, if there's medical marijuana production facilities anywhere in the bylaw, that they're all switched over to cannabis. And the final one, which is a one-liner, is our housekeeping item on our solar installations, where we're raising the height from 8 feet to 15 feet. They'd still be required a permit, but they won't be looking for those waivers all the time. So I don't know if there's any questions on this, but again, let's provide first reading so we can get into some consultation on these.
Are there any questions? If not, we need a motion for first reading of the land use amendments. Hubie. Hubie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is passed. And that will take us to item 8.6, Bylaw 1927-18, which is the public notification. Something new.
So that's me again. This is, I had brought up at a previous council meeting with a concern about proper notification being done through the newspaper. And so the intent of this bylaw is to add options that will be in addition to advertising in the newspaper. We would still advertise in the newspaper, but we would also advertise on our website or on the front counter, and that way, if one of the newspaper ads was missed, we didn't lose out on the requirement to have 2 consecutive weeks of advertising. So that's the intent of this bylaw, and Bylaw 1927-18 has the options that will be added for advertising purposes. So that number 1 is electronically by posting the notice prominently on the County of Newell official website, or electronically by posting the notice prominently on any of the County of Newell official social media sites, and by posting the notice at a designated location at the front reception counter of the County of Newell Administration Building. So by adding those 3 sites, it gives us the ability to move forward with a bylaw assuredly. So I can answer any questions for this. This again is requesting first reading to move it into the process.
It's pretty straightforward when it comes to resolutions, bylaw, meeting, public hearings, and then it says or other thing. And that's mentioned in the MGA too, but that leaves it so wide open. Do you have concerns about that?
I don't have a concern about it because from the planning and development perspective, there are certain things that we add to public hearing notices. I don't know if maybe Lane could speak to that because for me it's very specifically planning and development notices. There may be other notices that it could apply to, but nothing that I can think of at the moment.
Lane?
The other notices would primarily be for borrowing purposes. So you're required to have public hearings, formal advertising requirements for land use matters, and also anytime there's borrowings involved that the public needs to be aware of and given an opportunity to petition against. It's not that we would delete the requirement to advertise in the newspaper. This is simply a fallback position to make sure that if there is some glitch in the process that we're still in a position to move ahead if it's a critical matter.
Other questions? If not, could we get a motion for the first reading of this public notification bylaw? Kelly moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So we have, as far as planning stuff, 1:30 delegation, right? Is that everything else that you guys have for today? Okay, so that will be for 1:30. And we have other dates with some of our other staff. So maybe we can just go down to item 11.6 on the next page and do a couple more items before we recess for noon. Yes?
My agenda says 1 o'clock. Was that changed to 1:30?
Oh, sorry. It is 1 o'clock.
Okay,
Thanks, Al.
sorry. Just wanted to confirm.
No, it's 1 o'clock. So that's good for us to know. Councillor payment sheets, item 11.6. Questions? Anne-Marie? Sure.
Motion to approve.
There are no questions. Anne-Marie's moved to approve. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And the checks for payment, item 11.7. That's the one that was added, Ariana. That would be East Gem Road work still, I would think. Pardon me? Sorry. Brian?
It says on the invoice there, Highway 535 and 873 base and pave, progress payment number 1.
Okay.
And I'll move that.
Okay. All in favor? Motion is carried for checks for payment. Payment register. Any questions under 11.8? No questions for that? Someone want to make a motion to accept the payment register? Kelly moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And I think that's where we'll break for lunch. So we have to be back for 1 o'clock for item 1938-18.
So the red light comes on, the mic's on.
I think we're almost ready to get started, and as I said, that lunch has settled in quickly. You guys are all so quiet around this table. Anyhow, welcome everyone. My name's Molly Douglas, and I chair this meeting, and I am the Division 9 Councillor. Earlier, I guess I claimed to be Division 6. Kelly said she's still there, so I can't be there. Great to have you here today, and we'll do some introductions starting. We'll start maybe, Diane, are you familiar with these people? And we'll move around our table. Lionel will be joining us. He's just not back here yet, so we'll start with Hubie.
I'm Hubie Kellen, Division 2, Tilly area.
Brian DeJong, and I represent the area around the village of Dutchess.
Anne-Marie Phillipson, Patricia area.
Think you know me. Good afternoon.
Welcome, I'm Kevin Stevenson, County Administrator.
Hi, I'm Kelly Chrisman from around the Bazzano area, the west side of the county.
Hi, so my division is Division 5, which is west and south around Brooks.
Hello, I'm Ellen Unra, and I represent the village around Rosemary. Sorry.
Hi, Ariana Nielsen, Executive Assistant.
Lane Johnson, the Director of Corporate Services.
Sandra Stanway, Brooks Bulletin.
And we'll let Lionel introduce himself now he's back.
Lionel Justin, Division 10, which is north and east of Brooks.
And then if you folks could introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Susan Goodfriend. This is my husband, Brent, and our son, Wyatt.
Well, welcome everybody. And we'll let Alice probably kick it off so you get used to what's happening going around here, and then we'll certainly be ready to hear from you folks as well.
Thank you. So this is another interesting one. I seem to keep finding these for you guys to have to deal with. So this is Division 1. I've started doing the letters to people who have either pivots crossing a road allowance, or in this case, it seems more like this pivot is encroaching. So I'm going to offer a few options at the end of this report, and these are the landowners who are adjacent to the road allowance that I'm dealing with right now, and there's some interesting history to this one. So this one is about historical road issue. The request, just to be clear for this, is approval to proceed with whichever option council decides to go with. And then we can move it into the bylaw and public hearing process. This road allowance and secondary highway 875 are located in Division 1, right where the highway crosses the Bow River in the very southernmost boundary of the county. So this is approximately 6 miles south of Rolling Hills. There was a road plan registered in 1976 as a right-of-way for that secondary highway to cross the Bow River. I did find a signed transfer agreement that was dated in 1975 where there was land sold to the county for a value of just over $15,000. So the current landowners who are here today were contacted as part of this process. And in those discussions, Susan indicated that there was a historical agreement between the Paul family and the county that these road allowances would be transferred to the county in exchange for the lands needed to build secondary highway 875. And the agreement, she felt, included the road allowance land south of where 875 begins to curve, and it's shown as the green dotted line in the map that I have up on the screen. So I had Ariana help me do a search of the historical minutes to help verify this land swap idea. And unfortunately, we didn't find anything. Now, that doesn't mean the verbal agreement didn't happen. It means that there wasn't anything that we could find in the minutes. So Susan and her husband are requesting that the road allowance be closed and transferred at no cost to the family. And I've included that letter, I believe, in the agenda package. In a rough measurement of the length of the road allowance to be transferred, if this is the way that council wishes to proceed, that length is about 0.7 of a mile, and the length of the road that was used for Highway 875 is about a mile. So it is fairly similar in length. Since there is no record of the discussion to do this land swap, it's very difficult for staff to support the request. So I asked that they come today and speak to council about this so that they could give you more information about what this request involved. When reviewing this request, even if we do it as a transfer at no cost, we still need to close it by bylaw because it is not officially closed by bylaw. So this is similar to the one that we did a month or so ago where there was information in minutes saying that the land had been transferred. It still needs to be closed by bylaw in order to proceed. There's a little bit of other information that I included in my report. Discussion with municipal services and the county planner. If the transfer is done as shown on this map, you can see the part where I have the arrow right now. If that's transferred, then this piece here owned by the Eastern Irrigation District would not have access. So if there's going to be a transfer, the recommendation from the planner and municipal services is that it occurs from here, for example, to the river, so that access isn't cut off to the EID parcel. And again, from other staff, they're saying that since there's no written record of this agreement with the historical landowner, it's very difficult for staff to be able to support the closure and transfer. For your information, market value provided by the county assessor was $750 an acre, and we're looking at about 6 acres of land that needs to be transferred. So in thinking about this, I hadn't given you any options, or maybe I did and I just didn't print mine. I did give you options. So we will need resolutions to do this. So approve the request to close the road allowance and transfer the land at no cost to them. That's one of the options with this. We could also do it as transfer it at the value that's provided by the assessor. We could also look at it as a closure and lease, which in this instance might be the best way to go, only because it then doesn't take away the access to the EID, because we can include that in the lease agreement, that the EID still has access. So that's kind of the three options to look at. I'd like the good friends to give their side of this agreement that was done, just so that you can see that perspective, and then whatever council decides to move forward with, we can do. So that's all I have for right now.
Thanks, Alice. Anyone have a question? Any questions for Alice yet? Brian?
Just some clarification, and mostly regarding the land sale. You mentioned $15,000, and in your discussion points you have $15,160 at an assessed value of $100 per acre. Is the math right? Is it $1,500 or $15,000? Because it's 15 acres.
I'll show you the agreement.
10 times the value. You're right. Sorry, I missed the 10 times. So I'm curious how that works into this whole agreement, because if there was a land swap agreement for the purchase of land and removal of the existing right of way, but yet now there was the actual sale. So I'm trying to understand that point.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking too, is that because there's this transfer agreement, it looked to me like the land had been purchased and that a swap wasn't needed. And so good friends are going to be speaking to that part of it too.
Any other questions? All right, go ahead.
I'll just go over the report that I did up. The purpose of this report is to provide information about a historical road allowance issue from our perspective. According to our family history, the road allowance in question was traded for the present Highway 875 that runs through our property to cross the Bow River to Hayes. Although we have no legal documents, we were told that my grandfather John Paul, who owned the land in 1955, traded the land, which makes up the present day Highway 875, for the road allowance that runs north and south. This particular road was registered in a revised location from today in 1955, shown on the map 417 HD. So if I can pull that up. So this is the original road that went through in 1956, I believe that document is. Okay. So as far as I know, Grandpa didn't receive any money for that road to go through the property, but one was traded for the other. This original road was later upgraded in 1975, widening the right-of-way and also changing the road plan to make the curve in the road less dangerous. If you just want to put, okay. Basically, I just want to show that there was a legal document stating the original road in 1956. And then if you pull this one up, the road for 7611027. So that dotted line part, that's the original road, and the rest is the upgrade. So at that time in 1975, they widened the right-of-way and changed the road. At this time, my grandfather was paid $2,274 for damages on 15.16 acres at a cost of $150 an acre, as stated in the document provided by the County of Newell. So that's, if you want to bring up that document, Alice. Now, I wasn't sure about the math either, so maybe I'm reading it wrong, but we'll see what you people think. And I need to stress at this time that the payout was for damages including road relocation, additional road work for widening, topsoil reclamation, and fence repair, not a land sale. Evidence of this work is still visible today, as you can see where the seeded crested wheat grass is in the reclamation. So I don't know if you guys want to review that document and see what you come up with, but I don't think he got paid $15,000 unless you can see what you think. It says the sum 10 times the assessed value or $150 per acre, and from the acres above it was 15.16 acres, and if I multiply that I come up with $2,274. So. And I'd also like to point out that we, the current landowners, were contacted as part of the process to inform landowners using county road allowances for crop production. We would like to point out at this time that our pivot does indeed sprinkle over the portion of this road allowance as shown in the aerial photo, but we do not benefit from any crop production whatsoever. And I'll just get Wyatt to pass these photos around. So I'm providing photos in the land in question to clarify, as no one from your office would come to visit the site, preferring to judge solely by aerial photos. This land slopes into the river with a huge drop on one side and also a huge coulee on the other side. We are requesting that the road allowance in question be closed and transferred to ourselves at no cost due to the historical land swap made by my grandfather, John Paul. Although we do not initiate this road allowance request, we would be willing to pay for the survey and registration costs, and it went from $15,000 to now possibly up to $20,000, associated with consolidating the road allowance with our land, and we would be willing to take these costs if the cost of the land from the county was nil. We also request that you waive the application fee, as this land swap took place prior to 1970 when there was no closure fee. And after transferring the road allowance, we would also agree to provide access to the EID to the south portion of Section 1, 1414 west of the 4th. As we currently lease this land for grazing, we do not foresee a problem.
Thank you. Questions? Kelly?
I just have to ask, and this is for our elders on the council, why the County of Newell was involved with the widening or the redirection of Highway 873, which is a 3-numbered highway. Were things different back in, like, I know you weren't here in the 60s. Or
Thank
the
you.
50s.
Thank you for that. Yes,
but I'm giving you your due respect to answer the question.
There were different times, I do believe, in the history of the province where the numbered roads were run by the county. So it's, yes. So it's a provincial road. Yes. But, yes.
I'm not even sure at that time if it was provincial. I think it may have become provincial once they built the bridge. I should have brought the picture, because I brought a picture at a charity one time in the hills that shows the ferry, and the bill still shows the ferry, also shows the road curving around the house on the west side there. And I don't even know if it's the same in the same location as what this is showing. But anyway, the ferry came in the mid-50s when Hayes was developed. Before that, there was a road there, and people used to drive across the ice in the wintertime. It was a prairie trail. Certainly, I think there was a road there that probably followed no particular set road allowance, but was just the easiest way to get to the river at that point in time. And I would doubt very much if Susan's grandfather ever got anything for that road being there, and people used it all the time. So I have no reason not to believe what Susan is saying is pretty darn close to the truth.
Evan.
So, Madam Reeve, I just did a quick search back in 1975, and I see a check for $22.74 to Mr. John Paul. So that's probably the same number that you were quoting.
And that was for damages, not for land.
It doesn't say on the check register. I just verified the payment.
In the document that I received, it sort of has a few things that it could be. But like I said, from what I came up with, it would be like relocating the road, taking topsoil from that additional place to the new location, fixing fence, loss of use, yeah, those kinds of things. Like I don't see anything in the document that said for actual land sale. But there was additional land taken to build the road because they did widen it. So.
Other questions? Okay, so going back to a variety of things here. So, oh yeah, I want to know, the EID access is, Alice, could you show me that again, please, up there, where this needs to be?
This is the EID lands right here. Can you see the arrow?
Yes.
So if we do a closure and transfer, it would have to start just below this quarter section line so that they would still have access to that parcel. Do you know what I'm saying?
Is there a larger map to show the whole EID grazing piece that's there? It might be easier for them to understand.
What do you mean by that?
Like that section 1 is joined with another section above there that includes our whole grazing lease. They do have access to that grazing lease.
So what we're talking about, and we've talked about this before, is legal and physical access. So yes, they may have access in terms of physical means, but for legal access, that section line needs to be used. It should be, whoops.
My husband just said we would allow access, but do you have to provide access to every section or every quarter section?
We have to provide legal access where the road allowances are. So this is the road allowance right here. So we cannot cut off access to this parcel by closing and selling a road allowance. If we closed and leased it, then in the lease agreement, we could include that the EID still has access to it so that their legal and physical access is not cut off.
Could you sell it on the agreement that you gave the EID access to that parcel?
No, because then we're doing access by easement again, which is not something that the county wants to get into. If the EID consolidated these two parcels, it wouldn't be an issue. But the county cannot force someone to consolidate unless there's some other action being taken, like selling a road allowance.
Okay, so I got that worked out. So there's a couple of things worked into this then, as well as the EID issue. Yes, Clarence.
Alice, you also talk about in other information associated with this, the subdivision application 97 NL 33, approved in 97, and it includes a part of section 614.13.4 and half of the north half of 31.13.13 to create 3 parcels that would be better accommodate the land split by the road. Subdivision was not finalized, and so the parcels were not registered. And interestingly enough, if the subdivision had been registered, the access issue to the good friend dwelling on 31.13.13 would have been addressed. And that's, of course, the fact that their house has to have legal access from that quarter section that it's built on, which gives us, which influences what happens on the east side of that property. So you're saying, was that going to be 1 parcel or 3 parcels? And that's what I'm having trouble understanding why it...
I can show you the subdivision. I just have to scroll through here a bit. So there's the 3 parcels that were going to be created. And it would have actually fixed a lot of things if that had finished, because this road allowance here was closed and sold to the good friends. Their house then, because this is the other road allowance, their house would have access from this parcel. And this parcel, this road allowance here, we still wouldn't be able to close it except for down to there, but it would have helped make things a little bit easier. So that's a subdivision that was approved but not finalized.
So can it still be?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
And I guess what I'm interested in doing, because I don't want these people coming in here time and time again, because there's a whole bunch of issues down there. This is one part of it. There's parts on the other side of the road also. But I think you have to remember when we're dealing with this particular issue that it's a different time. That road allowance going straight north or straight south from 875 down to the river was never used by anyone. There was a usable prairie trail and then a little better road and then a little better road and then a little better road again. And finally it became a provincial highway. And none of us really know exactly what happened, but certainly somewhere along the line authorities from the county probably came, or from the provincial government came and asked for a rightful road allowance down to that ferry or bridge, whatever the case might have been. And there may have been dollars paid. But nobody, I can just see that happening in those days where they say, well, then that other part is ours. It's just something that happened back in those days. You know, you talk about it, okay, well, you know, this is a road that's everybody's using, well, we might as well have it, and then they won't have that other part that we're using right now. It's all grazing land at the time. You know, those types of things, I have no doubt happened all the time, and I wouldn't doubt very much if that happened in this case. So I really don't have a big issue when we have people coming and saying, well, we'll do our part and do the surveys and that, but let's just forget about this road that is a road allowance, but really serves no purpose. And can we have that land? But we will kind of get a middle ground where we're paying the survey stuff and the land becomes ours and the title is there. Because it's quite a chunk of road that's been there for a long time, and certainly it's not going to change. And people have built around it, they irrigated around it, and so forth. But then again, we also have to say what other, because we're trying to clean all this up so that people 60 years from now don't have to get it. Wyatt that it was going to be his kids having to solve it if we don't solve it today, but he said he didn't know how that was going to work. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get this stuff cleaned up so that people actually don't run into what we're running into today. So I would like to, kind of get a feel where council feels on this part of it, and we start doing some negotiations and we find out what happens on the further east there in the next number of months, and we tie all this together so that the good friends can kind of look at it as a package and say, well, that's fairly fair, and then we're done with it. And if that's something that we could do, I think that would be great. And if it's okay with council and if it's okay with them, I think we can work this thing through. But I wouldn't just want to. I kind of think doing it piecemeal and having to come back the next 6 months dealing with the east side again, that's something different again. So.
Anne-Marie?
Yeah, good points, Clarence. And then maybe in the meantime, we could find out if the EID would be willing to consolidate those pieces, so then we know what options we have on that side.
Alice?
Okay, so just so that I'm clear, you want the subdivision part to go through as well as the road closure and transfer? And also see if the EID will consolidate so that the whole road allowance can be transferred. Is that what you're saying?
I think we've got lots of things going on down there. And we want to clean this part up, but there's other things that are happening too that I think that we want, that we're sort of working our way through, seeing how it works. And the fact that we do still want to give access to the river, and it probably isn't going to be the present one that's between Good Friends and Desjardins, or Tilma's now. It's probably not going to be that. It's going to be the new one that's coming down, right straight kind of down where, I guess, where the number 5 comes down, right straight south of the number 5 there. When that new road goes to Parsons' property and that little triangle there, we extend that down to the river. That also, again, will solve our problems with further east where there's no access to the river again. So what we will then have is access to the river by that new road that's being proposed. The others will be closed, and it should be good for centuries. But it's kind of to me, it's all kind of a parcel, and then everybody knows where they stand.
Susan?
I'm just going to show you this map. I've talked to Ivan at the EID because, like I told Alice, this isn't that simple. You had a bit better picture before. Anyway, they are not interested in consolidating those two pieces because it'll cost them money. It's costing us a lot of money, and we didn't initiate this at all. But as you can see from this picture, the way, I'll just talk about it before you can see it. Because the coulees are so rugged, we couldn't divide up between the EID lease and our pasture. So again, I don't know when this fence was put in, Grandpa's age or era, I guess, but there is a fence that runs in those coulee hills, and that's divided the two property. And so if we divide those two parcels. Like, they are very willing to work with us to get a permanent division, and can you go down? Yeah. No. So, again, because, see those little, okay. Okay, can you make it a little bit smaller, Alice? Yeah. Okay, so this line right here, sorry, right there, where the line. Well, I don't know how to do that, I'm sorry. Yep. Okay, that little white line that runs through that pasture, that's the fence line. And it runs from there to the corner and then back down to the river. And so that's what divides those two pieces of land presently. So basically we are using some of the EID pasture and they're using some of our pasture. It's just been that way forever.
Because you can't fence these coulees.
It's impossible to fence. So we are in talks with the EID to get that legally divided.
Right, and this is EID.
Yeah, maybe we just kind of swap there.
So they would have the access to their parcel. So it's a non-issue. But it seems it has to all happen at once, so I don't quite know how that works. But we have to own the road allowance before we can go to the EID to make the offer.
So they're not into consolidation, but they're into getting this part straightened out.
They would swap this land for this land. Just the acres, when you work it out, are so close that it's within 1 acre or 2. So they would swap.
Which would be good to get that sorted out.
Then the fence line is your border instead of the old
road allowance.
Right?
And get it registered as fast as possible before the fence falls down.
Yeah.
But the problem is the surveying is huge, and that's where our biggest cost is. And right now, he gave me a quote of $15,000. They had Midwest quote on it. But now I'm not sure what it costs to consolidate with these other parcels. And the reason these other parcels weren't divided earlier was because of cost. We owned all the land, so we felt it was just easier to add the road allowance to Section 6, and we were done. And it was half the price. So.
Diane, the guru.
Again, it's interesting if we've got the EID subdivision thrown into all of this as well, because technically some of that road allowance would then move to, if it's going along the lines that we're showing, some of that's going to EID, some's going, so it's going back and forth. We're going to subdivide the road allowance as well. So it may be worthwhile having a bigger discussion with the EID, I can never spell his last name, the landowners, so that we can understand what's going on and how we would move this process forward, because then that would let us know whether or not we can close all the way to Highway 875. We're bad on highways numbers today too. So if we can get all the way there, then we can actually maybe do this all as sort of one step, because we can do a road closure, and then you put the road closure as part of the subdivision, and there's all kinds of things we can do to minimize the cost with regards to that. I do agree, because you're going to have to traverse the Bow River along that entire area that's to be subdivided, so that's where that's $15,000 is a good cost if that's what they're saying. I would expect it to probably be higher than that. But again, because we're against that water course and water boundaries and a bunch of things that are going to be involved in that, this is not a simple or cheap problem to fix. But I do think it probably might be worthwhile to go have that two-landowner discussion with the county so we can understand what they want to do, and then be able to bring that final solution back so that we can understand what we want to do and what process that should take.
Thank you. So who should be talking?
I would suggest we probably want to have planning and development, have both the EID representatives in, whether if it's Ivan or Nathan, to come in and have a discussion along with the landowners. Three-party discussion to try to figure out if there's a land swap that could happen so that we can satisfy the requirements of access, as well as satisfy, really rationalizing the way the land is being used now. I guess the question that maybe we need to be answered, which maybe could be answered today, is, where's council feeling with the idea of are we okay to sell this? Do we want to go there? We're okay to sell it, and at what cost or no cost, or those types of things, that we can at least get that question answered before we figure out who gets what, I guess.
Okay. Does that sound reasonable, Council? Brian?
Yeah, I think that's completely reasonable. And I mean, these people have come here with their, and by all intents and purposes, a situation that none of them created. And by and large, I think we should try to honor those commitments that were made, whether they were done just with a handshake or whatever. I don't think this is unreasonable. I mean, it's obvious that number, that 15,000, I don't think anybody's found a check that anybody was written or cashed or deposited that the county may or may not have. But I mean, if we don't have that evidence, obviously it's, to me, that never happened. So without that part of it, to me, the transfer is only logical. So I would think that I would support moving ahead with just a transfer for the exchange of the property from one to the other, as you laid out in your letter. And then the rest of the pieces, get together and talk to the three parties, and I hope that the EID would consolidate that, because it would sure clean up that little piece at the top rather than having us leave that open. Thanks.
Is there anyone on council who can't live with that? In getting this move forward? And Diane, does that answer, like if we went with the swap and tried to move it forward and had the landowners get together, and is that okay with you guys? Would that be, it sounds like it's not going to happen fast, but this has been quite a few decades, so I guess we don't have to worry about speed today. But I think if we can make it happen so that you guys don't have to keep coming back here, because I know you have better things to do.
Thanks. We'd appreciate that. I think that's the easiest thing, but like you said, it's not going to be quick or easy, I guess, for that matter, because working with three parties is going to be tough. But
yeah,
Ivan sounded very interested in doing that. So
yeah, and we try and work with the EID whenever we can, and we're all in this together, serving you people. So there should be some resolution, I hope. And yeah, anything else today then that we need to know? You guys have the contacts for our planning people, and you'll have developed an intimate relationship with them by the time this is all over. Hopefully it'll be a positive, intimate relationship. And Alice, she has a question.
That, I mean, that works well for the west side of the highway. So my question is back to this east side, and my thought with that is, as much as I would really like to get all of it figured out at the same time, my thought is this is a separate thing that we may have to deal with at another time, and adding it to this at this time could just really complicate things.
Well, this first part, I think, is sort of a standalone. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It's fine. It's fine with good friends. It's fine with me too. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Riverland is always interesting, isn't it?
Okay.
Appreciate you coming in, and appreciate staff's help with trying to come to solutions. You betcha. Okay, staff planning and development, that's it now for today? Perfect, thank you. We will go back then to, I think it's Todd's turn. It is. Item 10, Ag Fieldman's report.
Thank you. Really going to try and monopolize quite a bit of your time today. I apologize in advance, but I think we can get through it relatively quickly. So first things first, the Fieldman's report. I do believe we had a great season. Not really weather-wise, but when you kind of got to take advantage of those different weather patterns. So when it's really rainy, wet season, we do a lot of spraying because we have lots of growth. When it's a dry season, we do lots of investigating because we don't have as much growth. So I think we had a very productive season. Roadside mowing program, the guys we're in today, they're kind of coming to a relative close. Not a lot of growth since we were on the second pass in the north. So they're clipping right along about 8 clicks an hour, which is pretty fast when you got to go around signs and delineators and culverts and those kinds of things. So that's good. I believe that our water truck idea worked okay. We are noticing there's quite a bit more deadheading this way where they have to, drive distances with their mowers up and not mowing. Trying to all work in the same area is great, except you get done your area and you got 10 miles to go to get to your next little area. So not perfect in that way, but minimizing the risk of starting a fire was good. We did complete all our surveys. So grasshoppers and bacterial ring rot, a couple club root surveys, nothing really alarming. Our drill rentals are up a little bit. Our other rentals are kind of in check with normal years. We did sell out of our homemade magpie traps, so that's good. We made 10 last year, and I think we definitely sold all of those ones. And I think we even sold one of our oldest rental ones that kind of needed to go by the wayside anyways. So that was good. I think, like I said, the inspection season for regulated weeds was awesome. We did have 2 new vegetation management techs and 2 returning ones, so a very wide range of attitudes and skill sets and persistence. So it was good. I think Catherine did a good job keeping everybody on check and making us go places we had never gone before. So when you take a young vegetation management technician from GEM and you send him through GEM and he gets lost in GEM, that's awesome. That's the way it's supposed to be. That means you're on roads you've never been on. You're in the middle of a oil field lease that you've never ever been to, which is good because that means he's never partied in that area either. So, but anyway, so I think it was awesome. I think we've discussed this a few times in the past. Our river control program, it's just come so far, going from where we used to collect 6 or 7 tons of material where we're down to picking, 1 trailer load through the whole 60 miles, but doing a little more spraying of some troublesome species that are encroaching the farmland instead of just the riverbanks. Phragmites, Catherine went out and sprayed it on September 10th, and found a few more plants than we had noted before, just right in the same area, so nothing alarming, just a good keen eye, and found those, got them controlled. And then after that, kind of we're moving into our fall project, so the ground is starting to cool off. We're going to hit roadside seeding here in a couple of weeks, do a little bit of brush control, seed plant inspections like always, like the magpie trap inspections, and then all our Emerson stuff as well. So I think the other thing I wanted to touch on that I wrote down here, we do, once harvest is complete, if that, the weather smartens up and we get that done, we're hoping to do a few more environmental farm plans. I think the total was 28 this spring, with about 7 more that are open. So we're hoping to double that number here come wintertime and spread the love around a little bit instead of doing it all in 2 weeks or 2 months or whatever. So, yeah.
Questions?
In regards to Club Road, does the county have any recourse for producers that, for example, farm the same piece of land with canola 4 years in a row?
No, and in fact, probably the only thing we would have is records of where the canola has been grown since, because we've been doing this survey since 2007, 2008. So we would have a pretty good record of where canola has been grown. in the county because we do inspect or try to inspect every single irrigated canola field, but we don't monitor year after year who's growing what. Our producers know what the best management practices are. They know that rotations are key. I think we're relatively lucky in our municipality because we have lots of options for people to grow, and the alfalfa seed industry really helps us to get a break between wheat, canola, alfalfa seed, so that really helps. And then we've injected a few new ones, so we got some soybeans, you've got guys growing flax, the obvious ones, barley, peas. So we do have some pretty good luxuries, but there's always those guys that like to grow the same things, for sure. We're 100 times better than other municipalities where they inspect 600 canola fields, and many of them are on the same places every year.
Okay. Oh, Brian.
In regards to the river and the weed issues on our boundary, which are obviously getting better, and after reading Anne Marie's report about BC, the trans-border tour, what have you seen gains over the last few years with other municipalities when it comes to how they mine their part of the river or their part of that border? Because we have two rivers that are north and south borders, and I guess that's probably the biggest conduit for weeds to get into our area. So I'm just curious about the relationship with Vulcan and Tabor and special areas, I guess.
I guess we haven't really noted any change in attitudes or perception or how things are done, mostly because we're probably the only ones that do programs like we do. So on our south border, you mentioned it, we have Vulcan, who they don't have scentless chamomile as a prohibited noxious weed species. For us, we do. So that, it doesn't really absolve them of the right to go and do things, but they don't do a lot of river work. Tabor's in the same boat. They have different species than we do, and some that are on our prohibited noxious list, like leafy spurge and chamomile, obviously. And then Cypress County, they're all aware of what's going on. They just maybe don't have the resources, or they don't share the same ideals that we do, that we want to take care of those. So I do talk a lot. That's what I'm good at. But it kind of falls on deaf ears. They don't have the resources that we do to concentrate in those areas. So they spread them out in different areas, whether it's roadside spraying or other things.
Once we get regionalization done, we'll move on to that next. Get on those boundary people.
Well, I guess my next part of that is to Anne Marie. Are some of those people, were they on those tours? Because to me, that really highlights, when you look at the BC and the Alberta, the differences between some of those areas and how their focus is different, and you obviously get positive results when you're active at it. And if we have colleagues that are on these tours, to me it's highlighted, and it basically says that where we should be directing our energies in those areas. So I'm curious whether there was other participants from those municipalities.
I don't think from Cypress or Vulcan. We had some from Rocky View, and they're doing a pretty good job. Pincher area, good people that are on top of things already. So it's almost like talking to the converted. But it would be a good point to maybe next time get Cypress, encourage them to be on there.
Well, I don't want to put anybody down. Everybody's got different priorities, and every ag service board has different priorities. We also we suck raw water out of the Bow River for our irrigation system. So if we can stop things on the Bow River, or don't allow the seeds to hit the waters that are coming in, that saves us from having to look at things on 300,000 acres plus all those irrigation networks. So we have a little more focus that way, that's where we think, or we feel, the upstream guys from us, whether it be Wheatland, Rocky View's another good one, Calgary, Siksika, those are the guys that we would really appreciate doing the best job they possibly can, because then with Cypress, I mean, we care because we're weed people, but I mean, we do the south part of our county last too, so that if we miss anything, it goes to Cypress. I hope they watch the council minutes and they can, yeah, I'll have some great conversations with those guys, but you know, it's just, yeah, everybody's got their own programming and different priorities from the Ag Service Boards, and you guys have always been supportive of that program, and honestly, we've been thankful because we've done some great work. So. And it goes back a long ways. I remember, I'm going to say it was my second year down there when it was right after a flood, and it was just horrible. And I came back to the, I think that was actually when I had an incident with a quad, and I came back to the shop to get some toe straps, and I told Steve, I was like, this is going to take forever. We're going to spend so much money down there. And he just looked at me, he's like, well, what's our job? Our job is to maintain those weed populations. So he says, I don't care what you guys spend on staff resources, control those weed populations. And that's kind of where, you know, that's really been our focus, is that, you know, bust our butts and control those populations and come home happy. So.
All right, somebody want to move the motion to accept Todd's report? Here he does. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried, and we'll move on to the strychnine business.
Perfect. I committed to bringing our letter back, or what we kind of came up with for verbiage with our letter back here to discuss. And I asked Molly, and she graciously went through my English, because my English isn't always perfect. But I think we have a pretty good message that we're sending to PMRA. I hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears. I hope they listen. There's lots of municipalities that are doing the same. I think there's been 3 or 4 letters since we put everything into the council agenda that have come forward. So everybody's doing their thing. I've talked to many, many ratepayers, more than I can count for sure, that have gone through the process of, you know, putting their comments forward on what they think just through the webpage. So it's encouraging. I think at least all the people that use strychnine understand that we still need to use it. We just have to get the message to PMRA that we need to re-register it for ground squirrels and continue. So I guess really why it's here is just to kind of get approval of the message and send it away.
So I decided I'd reread the letter last night, which is always a bad thing to do. Read paragraph 3, everybody. Please. It is often suggested. I don't know, I can't see that when I'm reading it. No, it is often suggested. The one above it is the paragraph, sorry. Anyhow, we don't need to ponder it for a long time. It's this sentence. I read it about 5 times, and today I think it's still wrong. Although there could be a possibility of secondary poisoning, both of those birds of prey regularly would feed on a live rodent far less often than a dead gopher. It's far more often, right, Todd? They want to eat alive. Well, so did Todd and I. And like, I read it I thought, is there something wrong with this? This is about 10:30 last night, and I'm thinking, that's not right. But we caught it. No, this is an A letter from Todd. But, yeah, because... Anyhow, I think it should be far more often than it did.
I'll definitely make that adjustment.
Thank you, Todd, for that. Anyhow, we need a motion for that letter. Another one, where's the one? Both of those birds of prey regularly feed on a live rodent far less often than on a dead gopher. I like it. Do not read any farther, because we'll be here till midnight. Thanks, Emery. The Orsk letter I'll never forget. Took a whole week. that we didn't like and went back to the original. All in favor? Did I say that? Okay. Motion is approved. Thanks for that, Todd.
Well, thank you.
Well, you should. You see, you always should. I second-guessed myself and Todd last night. I thought, I'm just going to read this again, and went, something weird there. All right. So on to resolutions then, I guess.
Yeah, and I think these resolutions are from the 2018 Ag Service Board Conference, and just kind of a wrap-up of what the Ag Service Board Committee has went through, and whether they have accepted it in principle, if it's unsatisfactory, or if they need to do some more work. So I thought it was more of an information kind of paper, but I wanted you guys to at least see it. And
yeah, it is interesting to see what they do with it.
Yeah,
I love their responses sometimes. It's just like, okay, we know all that. Answer the question. Yeah.
And I often find when they explain, you know, what the committee, what they felt, it's not a very political what they felt. It's very ag. You know, we thought this was incomplete because they didn't answer the question. You know, if they threw a darn or something in there, it would be perfect. Just sitting on a tailgate talking about it. So. But yeah, that was about all I had. So I just wanted to, like I said, bring it forward. I thought about just emailing it out, but thought this would be a better avenue.
Okay. Brian.
I was actually quite encouraged for that one resolution that was passed about the laying hens, or the eggs, I think it was. I mean, that was exactly the discussion that we had around the table about why we would interfere with the organization that monitors, or that is the umbrella organization for the egg producers. And that was the response, is, you know, we respect that group. So as an Ag Service Board, why would we be telling them how to run their business? So I thought that was actually sort of a pat on the back for the rest of us.
Well, supply management is a huge topic right now, and I don't profess to know both sides well enough to ever argue it, but it's a good conversation anyway.
All right. Thank you, Todd. Not much. And the 16th of October it is. People know to respond to.
And everybody responded, so thank you very much. That was very quick. I think that almost a record for sure of responses coming back, so appreciate it very much. And I already got his tickets.
Perfect. Okay. Stephanie, please join us for, I'm assuming, item 11, 2, and 3. Just 2?
Yes, the audit services.
Okay.
So
I think we should do 3 as well. Show your boss that you don't even need him. Okay. She's not going to comment.
This is being recorded, so.
I love it. All right. Carry on.
So I'm really just here to get a motion from council to appoint our new auditors for the upcoming 3 years of our audit, with the option to renew. So we recently sent out a request for proposal and received 8 replies, and we looked at those 8 and came up with 3 choices, which we have here in our RFD. And it looks like we're coming here to ask that option 1 is recommended, that we appoint Avail LLP as our upcoming auditors, which would be a change from KPMG, who has been our auditors since 2005.
But you gotta keep them on their toes. We need a motion for that. Kelly? Okay, any discussion?
Anybody have any questions?
Questions? No? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
All right, that was easy.
Did you think we'd argue with you, Stephanie? We'll argue with Matt, but we'd never argue with you. All right, thank you, Stephanie. Matt, I tried to convince Stephanie just to take this on for you, but...
It would have been all right with me. I could have stayed upstairs
I know.
digesting that steak. Thanks for lunch.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so we're looking at charitable donations receipt policy. I guess really what initiated this was somebody wanting to give us a parcel of land back, and we thought, well, maybe we should put something on paper how we're going to deal with donations in the future. It's pretty straightforward policy. You know, we'll issue a charitable donation receipt, which our system is set up to do for donations over $25 if the donor requests a receipt. We do have in here that we will wait for checks to clear before we're going to send your charitable donation receipt.
Such a trusting place.
Right. I mean, cash, no problem. You can have your receipt today. Checks will wait for a bit. If it's land, we wait for the title to clear, and then we'll issue the receipt. We've put the onus on donors to provide a valuation. That's probably the biggest risk area for us issuing these receipts. I fully expect we'll probably get audited from the CRA on this first receipt we're going to issue for land. We've given the CAO the authority to accept donations in kind. That might be something council wants to consider. Do you want a threshold in this policy? You know, it's fine for our CAO to accept in-kind donations, 10,000 and under, but otherwise we want to know what's coming in. I don't have that written in right now. It's largely at the discretion and good judgment of your CAO, whether they'll accept an in-kind donation. I think that's the long and short of it.
Questions for Matt? Or Emery?
Well, question for Kevin. How do you feel about that $10,000 limit suggestion that Matt gave?
Well, I don't think, to me, the values is not the issue. It's more of making sure what we're accepting is inaccurate, because whoever puts the value to that is where the audit will come in and where you can be held accountable. So my fear is always about the dollar value we assign to something, but accepting an asset, the risk is covered off in there. We do have a committee, our management team committee goes through our risks in the county, so it would be part of that agenda. And as long as nobody illustrated a risk associated with a asset or a piece of land, then we would be free to be able to accept it. So I'm not so much worried about what we take in. I don't think we're going to get bombarded with these things, but if we end up with some that are questionable, we can change the policy at that time. But I just don't think it's going to be a big thing.
All right. Motion. Anne-Marie moves then to accept the new policy. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Matt. All right. We have a meeting tomorrow. Foothills, Littlebow. And there's the agenda, and with the agenda are resolutions. Do you want to have a quick look at them, talk about them, wait until tomorrow? What are you feeling? Brian?
I guess the only part that I was a little bit lost on was the reference on some of the safety and liability stuff on to Bills 30. And if whether Kevin or Lane or somebody has more knowledge as far as the details of that bill, as far as speaking to the resolution, whether it's something we should be considering supporting or not. So my lack of information for Bill 30 is what's prompting my question.
And that's a good one, Brian. And those are the first two resolutions, I believe. And it's about the term served. I'm assuming these are the safety committees that people have to have within their businesses now, or farms, even if it's a farm that has to have all this safety stuff done. Hasn't been anything that has impacted municipal organizations, maybe? I don't. Nothing you've heard of, Blaine or Kevin?
Let me do some quick research on this afternoon and see if we can get you some information for tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds good. Anne-Marie? And I wanted to know what you guys thought about the cycling one from Cycles. They want to restrict the bicycles on their roads, and I kind of pictured the road to Elkwater, which is a narrow road, very windy and hilly, so I could see where it's a little scary there. But it's only 4 months out of the year, and can't they just do a share the road program? Like, what did you guys think about that one?
I thought it was pretty harsh. I think education and signage, and I mean, if we want to be, especially in tourist, I mean, if it's touristy areas, I get it if it's a farm road out in the country and it's probably not going to be paved, so there's not going to be people. I think every driver has concerns about cyclists when they're on the road, the same road. So, I don't know, I just sort of thought it was a tough stance myself.
I thought it was an overreaction, and that said, when there's a tragedy and somebody loses their life, it's hard not to overreact.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, do we know all the circumstances that revolve around that? The first thing that comes to my mind is was somebody on a cell phone that ran over somebody on a cyclist. I mean, I don't know. That's another assumption. We're assuming that the cyclist was not being responsible on the road based on the information. We don't know that. And it goes to the fact of that when there's fatalities on a road, does there need to be changes every time? I don't think that's logical. Otherwise we'd have four-way stops at every intersection and throughout this province. And I don't think that's realistic. I would never support this. I think that if anything, we should, whether it's education or some other avenue to help a cyclist or the people that do use the roads in that manner. It's just another conduit of transportation. I mean, there's people that are moving more to cyclists and cycling, and I think that should be encouraged. And to do this, I think, counters that. So I hope that that this is defeated.
Clarence?
Well, I agree with you, Brian. And next thing you know, next time we could hit a pedestrian, there's no pedestrians on the road either. It's nuts.
Well, it'd be like if you hit another car, well, maybe you should take the cars off the road too. Yeah. It's like my dad said years ago when they were bringing in seatbelts. He said, geez, pretty soon we're going to have to be driving down the road in tanks, which he thought would give him a big advantage because he'd been a tank driver. Anybody else with questions about any of the... It's always fun to listen, and we must go with an open mind to Foothills, Littlebow, always. Come on, say that one. Better. Anything else on those? Who's not able to go tomorrow? There's a few people are going. Clarence and... Yeah. there's enough anyhow. I haven't been for a couple of times, I think. So I'm going to go tomorrow. So. Perfect. All right, we'll move on to convention and meetings with ministers. And Ariana has some info, I think, on that one. So Ariana, the AT staff are the only ones that have set up anything so far?
I haven't contacted anyone so far.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess this is just to determine which ministers you want to meet with. Alberta Transportation South Region staff have scheduled a meeting on November 21st from 10 to 10:25 a.m.
And I think it's always, sometimes I like meeting with those guys, especially if they've been partying with us the night before to see how Darren is. Because he's always so good. Other ministers, are we thinking of, just so Ariana can begin working on it? Well, in advance, certainly, but they probably don't have any plans yet anyhow.
Probably not.
No.
But we haven't been very successful in getting any meetings in the past few years, but we'll keep trying.
Yes.
And then topics of discussion for the South Region staff.
Oh, yeah. One thing I wanted to see if they've done anything more or thought anything more about putting up a dangerous intersection sign ahead or something out at JBS, because that's something that JBS still is concerned about, I know. That was what came to mind for me. These guys in our roads, though, are partnerships with, I guess, 876. Any signs of life or action on that one yet, Anne-Marie? No? That's coming pretty soon with the bridge files that they're going to tender. But I thought about municipal affairs too. Wouldn't that be good to maybe meet with them, and even if it's just to give them an update how we started the conversation in this area? If we could get a meeting with Shay Anderson, yeah. Barry speaks to him all the time because of his position, but it would be really good for us to do that too, or some of us to go. Anything else for staff transportation? I don't know if Mark has anything. Or I've seen road counters. Have you guys seen road counters out in your areas? I'm assuming they're provincial, because there was one on 36 and the 561. And I thought, well, it's not county if they're sitting there. So it must be provincial road counters. You could add that to, I'd be curious as to what if they have any reasons or how they come up with what they count or what roads they choose. I would be interested in knowing what they would think about roundabouts instead of four-way stops, and if they're willing to help municipalities put those in. Mm-hmm. Like at 36 and number 1. I think that'd be a good place for one. All right, so we've got municipal affairs, transportation staff, anyhow. We'll see if they contact us about meetings later. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Ariana. We have done councillor payment sheets already, and so we move to requests for function of council. And something is interesting this morning when Ashley from the Brooks Local Immigration Partnership said, it'd be great if somebody could come to they have their meetings 4 times a year. And
I was sitting thinking, man, this could go on and on. It's hard to know when to say enough committees already. It's all good stuff, but which is another reason for regionalization, you know. Truly. Anyhow, Power Up Brooks Conference. Oh, sorry.
This spring we went to a building cultural capacity workshop. A number of us went. And there is also a second session of that.
Oh, yes. October.
I'm wondering what council thought on that. I'm going irregardless of what you say. So
that's the beginning of October, isn't it? On the 4th.
Yes.
I have it on my calendar.
It's the 4th for the second session. It's the first for what we went to. Kelly, weren't you there? Molly was there?
I did them before you guys. No, I didn't do the second one. Just the first. Well, I think it's important stuff, actually, for our community. So, Clarence, you would be interested in...
I've read it.
Yeah. Kelly?
Make a motion that Clarence be paid as a function of council to attend. And then if it's good, I want to hear about it.
And say, since you went to the first one, do you want to go to the second one? Is it worthwhile for two to be there? Or
I'm going to it.
Okay. You go to it.
I want to go to it, and I think I just went to the first one on my own anyhow too. So, but yeah, 2. Okay. All right. All in favor of that? Opposed? Motion is carried. So that one's not on this list, but the Power Up one comes to us out of joint services as second year. And I don't know, Tracy, did you go last year? And Lionel went last year. And I was sick, I think. I couldn't believe it. Never get sick. I didn't go anyhow. And Lionel and Tracy?
I would like to go if I could.
Okay. If somebody else wants to go, Amory.
So if Lionel would go, would it be an option to pay for registration for a business person to go, that we sponsor another person to go? No, I'm just thinking if we know of a young or old entrepreneur that might benefit. Yesterday at Roger Brooks, there was a young man. He works for the City of Brooks Public Works. Jess was his name. I didn't catch his last name. He wants to start a restaurant. And, you know, I just thought, gee, that would be perfect. This is a young man, and if we would sponsor his registration, that might encourage him to go.
And I wasn't there last year. Was there a variety of business people there? I mean, who's it aimed at? Entrepreneurial type people?
There was quite a variety. Some existing, some potential business people. So yeah, there was a good show. I hope that the numbers are up a little more this year again. I would assume they would be up a little more.
Was there about 80 there last year?
Something like that. Maybe Layden remembers.
So we could leave that option open
if you hear of somebody, I mean, at one time we used to try to get people from the county, young people that were interested in things like that, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But I guess we could leave that open, or you guys want to follow up with this person that you talked to, or? No, I didn't either. If we make a motion that Lionel goes and one community member, then no, I don't mind approaching him and letting you guys know if he's interested, and if he's not, then maybe you can come up with a second name. Just a thought. We don't even have to do it. We could just say Lionel goes and reports back. I'll make a motion that Lionel goes to the Power Up conference. All in favor? Opposed? So you're bringing greetings then, Lionel, too. Okay, the Rural Mental Health Conference. It's November 12th to 14th. There's definitely, I find pressure on me anyhow. I don't know about you guys, how people react, but you know, people like that actually want to meet with me, and so they want us. Everybody wants somebody to go to these things. I don't know, maybe I feel more pressure than the rest of you because of that. But to be represented, you know, for the county to be there in some way. And I know Clarence, FCSS will be involved with that.
Not formally, I don't think.
No.
I'm going, though. But again, I just went because I'm interested.
Well, I think it should be a function of council, because you're going to end up, we're giving money to that. I mean, through joint services. And probably FCSS did, and so chances are, yeah, they'll expect representation. Ariana?
We get one free registration because we put money into it, so that's why this is on the agenda, with nobody expressing interest on it. Like, I put it on there, just so you make sure you send at least one person.
Yeah, I've already paid the registration. Somebody else will do it.
You've paid it for nothing, Phil? Or you paid it through some committee? Ellen?
Can't we just reimburse Clarence because you paid for it out of your own pocket, or through FCSS?
Ariana is saying there's a free one, and I've already paid, so it's not a council thing. I paid out of my own pocket because I wanted to go personally. I will go for the council if they make it a function of council. I'll write a report. If you don't, I won't.
I'll make that motion.
Free one.
Yeah. I can go. I'll go to that. So that would have to be a function of council. I'm going to make a motion for that, I guess. Ellen did. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. No? Oh. Gotcha. Brian.
So I think I need some clarification. We passed a motion, but I don't think I didn't hear for two. functions for 2 people for this.
And I think it should be for 2.
I think so too. So, and I was going to suggest that perhaps if you have enough on your plate that somebody else go. It wouldn't be me. I don't have a great deal of interest in this particular subject, but if there's others and you want to break, because you do a lot for us, Molly. And,
well, I'll tell you what happens when you, because I go to those CCN meetings as well. You've been to one, Brian. That's tied in with this. And so you sort of, you get drawn in. So this is one that I would like to go to. It doesn't bother me at all to go to. And I would be like Clarence, I would pay for myself if it's coming to that. But it sounds like it isn't, because there's a free, the registration is paid for, right? Yeah.
I just want to make sure our minutes reflect that we're two members of council, Molly and Clarence, are going to be as a function of council for this. So I wasn't sure if that was reflected accurately in the motion.
That was the concept? Okay. Looks like that was the intention anyhow, so. Okay. Anything else, function of council? Do you have to let Ariana know about AAMDC or RMA yet?
I'm going to put that on the next council meeting, okay. I think.
All right, committee reports. There is oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask Ariana about, because it was in one of the last RMA reports, they were talking about the hotel rooms for the conference to book as soon as possible. Why? Because of the football or something, or the Grey Cup?
Do not panic. I have the hotel rooms. They're booked.
And Tracy, I read it too, and I thought, I know Ariana's got this under control, but I did email her. I emailed her. I was. You can hardly trust her, you know. Committee reports. Anne-Marie has a number of them there. And there is a sheet somewhere here that I was writing on today. Bow River Basin, that's presented somewhere already, right? Yes. Canadian Badlands. It's on the list. Is that you? Okay, Ellen?
Yeah, a few of us went yesterday to Roger Brooks. He was amazing, I thought. Now, first of all, don't kill the messenger. But from for a potential tourist point of view, they thought that the name Newell isn't going to do it. They suggested to go with Brooks because it is the city, and because Newell, nobody knows where the city of Newell is. Now, he also suggested to have a special niche. You can't be everything to all people. He says you've got to have one niche. He suggested maybe, because we have the big lake, fishing on the lake, if you will, then he had another suggestion. And again, it was just a suggestion, which was international city, i.e., have restaurants that cater to many, many different cultures. And he thought that if we are known for that, people would actually travel all the way from Calgary and go to these restaurants. And obviously, if they are associated with one particular group, they would travel that far. One other thing, it should be business driven. Although they should be speaking to the local clubs and politicians. Product development is more important than marketing. One thing that's really important, we have the Centennial Park downtown. Now, according to him, there should be a place where you can have many events. Now, he thought the layout wasn't very purposeful for this. He thought you just need a flat terrain where you could put anything, i.e. the food trucks, the whatever it may be. Now, one really important aspect was to have a public washroom. Now, he's been at this since the 70s, and he said it is proven that if you actually have a private bathroom, a public bathroom, people will stay a lot longer. And that's about what I have to say. Maybe the others have something to add.
He's a great speaker. Hubie.
Signage. We don't have good enough signage on the highway or in town.
Anybody else have anything to add from that?
But I think the only reason we don't have signage is because we have bylaws that say you can't put them up.
It was also interesting how at the end of his session he talked about, like Ellen mentioned, Newell and Brooks, people don't know where the boundaries are, so it makes sense to think and plan as a region. What's good for Brooks is good for the smaller communities, and don't get hung up on names. Just look at your whole region, and I thought that was a really good message to close on.
Yeah. Sort of like Clarence at the AGM the other night of the water company. All the bombs he dropped about regionalization. It's perfect. No, it's for me, I always enjoy listening about the millennials because I'm not quite sure how they fit into everything. He claims they're the most civic-minded group that there's ever been. Being part of the baby boomers who were totally anti-establishment back in when I went to university, that's what it was all about, and we turned into the biggest consumers and biggest establishment people there were. So the millennials are not going to be like us. They're going to be different for sure. So yeah. And he said if you want to identify your something that makes you stand out, it has to be the most of something, the biggest of something, or the best of something, which I found interesting too. And you have to narrow your focus. You can't be all over the map to do this branding type stuff. But there were lots of people there from our economic development group from the city, so I'm sure they'll be working on it in a big way, hopefully. Amory.
2 examples of how you can attract people to come off the highway. He had one community that spent $60,000 on 2 bathrooms, and they were bathrooms that from the outside it's a mirror, but when you're inside you can see the people on the street. So it's a challenge for people, go off the highway and see if you're brave enough to use that toilet. And it was awesome, cost them $60,000, but people are coming into town and using the restaurants and buying stuff. So that was one good example. And one was a local man who wanted to have the biggest of something. So he made, I think he started with an enormous rocking chair, and then he had the biggest pencil and a bird cage where kids could go in and sit on a swing. And that drew people off the highway.
Biggest mailbox. It was weird. Yeah. He did it all on his own too. He was an important part of the community, obviously. And the cinnamon buns, yeah. Okay, thank you. Crime Stoppers.
More so just update through Safe Communities. They're kind of through the RCMP report, they're finding that there's more methamphetamine that's moving into this area than there ever has been. But overall, rural crime is down in the province. So I guess that came out from at a rural crime watch meeting the other night. But so just that, and then just a reminder from the RCMP that because they did have that big fraud bust or whatever where they found Like I think there was over 140 charges laid in one household, and it was stolen mail and checks, and like they just found lots of stuff that like these crooks had gone into people's mailboxes and stolen mails, and then they fraudulently cashed them. And just a reminder from the RCMP is to, shred any documents that have your personal information on it. Like if, be careful where you store like anything with your social insurance number and that kind of thing, because it's identity theft that they're working on too once they get a hold of this stuff. So that was just kind of a thing that come out there. One of the sort of external group activities that happened not too long ago was JBS actually sponsored a soccer team. It was a weekend of soccer, and they had 8 different teams, and the Somalian team was the champions. And so I guess it was quite neat. It attracted a lot of people to watch, and just it was quite an event. That
teams from here?
Yep, just
cool.
in Brooks and the surrounding area. So I guess it went over really, really well. And then Safe Community also will be doing the, along with the RCMP, firefighters, and Safe Community members, they're going to be giving away, or doing the Halloween pass out the candy bags. And so they have like the peace officers and the Safe Kids card, and the RCMP will drive around and they hand out bags of candy to kids, and it goes over really well. They usually give out, I think they give out around $1,200 of candy that night, and it works out really wonderful. And at first the kids are like, oh no, the police are coming. And so it does the twofold in that it kind of, they see police in the area, so it kind of, watches the vandalism and, bad stuff that can happen on Halloween. But then it's a good interaction with youth and RCMP. So we're working on that again for this year. And I think that was it for Safe Communities.
Thank you. Lionel, Newell Recycling and Regional Solid Waste.
Yeah, so not a lot to report about the Newell Solid Waste. It just seems to run along on its own and full of garbage anyway. But the recycle depot, just follow up a little bit on from Tracy's report, we are going to have a shredding event. Now, I don't remember the date, but I will find out and I'll email it to you guys if you want to drop off shredding materials. Other than that, the depot pretty much runs itself. Whenever you get Raymond running anything, you don't really have to get too involved. So.
Are they ever going to retire?
No, he's not allowed to.
Good. I have no idea
That's
how
the rule.
old they are. But...
the one other event I did go to was Sewa AGM last week. And there again, I mean, it's still alive, but it's limping, and it needs a monetary handout. Is what it needs in order to ever go ahead. And they're still working on government. And if government doesn't work out, there is a chance the private sector may step up. And I don't know if whether that's really feasible or not, but it might be. Other than that, there's not too much else going on there.
Okay. Clara?
Is it, we've heard this, nobody wants to step up to the plate. Is it something we should look as a county or as a region? Is it close enough to being profitable that it might be profitable?
I don't know those numbers. I think the only way to make it profitable would probably be to charge tipping fees high enough to make it work, and that's where it gets difficult, to ask the communities to step up the plate that much. And Like it's a major project. It's $400 million. So it's not, I don't know if we want to go there or not. Kevin?
That'll never happen. Yeah, no, I said if it's in 20, if we wait that long, the leader will be gone. Okay, and Clarence, NRSC?
Nothing much. I think I gave everybody who wasn't at the meeting an annual report, and I just want to make sure I have done that. And I do have some extras. Anybody has some if they want to hand out somewhere, certainly could do that. So our annual meeting was, Brian did well, I think. He wasn't as nervous as I thought he might be. He kept looking for Kevin, and Kevin decided to stay away, so left him alone. He did well, though. It's good.
It was a great night, I thought, except that we weren't able to see Ralph, but yeah. Rec Board, Div 5 and 10.
We had our meeting last night, and just a couple of kind of neat things that I wanted to share. October 6th, and this is kind of a neat thing, there's going to be a female hockey skills day, and it's going to be held at the CRA, and they're going to have both indoors and outdoors skills set up, and it's to promote female hockey. And there's going to be 4 teams that are coming. They're actually going to kind of do a tournament. But any youth, any female or girl that's interested in hockey can come that weekend and learn how to handle the puck and stuff like that to try to get more and more people. Also, what Parks and Rec Board is doing right now is we're looking at changing the setup of that board and making it so that we have more county involvement. Because right now there's just the 2 councillors, just Lionel and I, and 1 member at large. But we're going to, it's proposed to increase it so we'll have 5. So we'll have 2 councillors, 3 citizens at large. The city will have 2 councillors and 4 citizens at large. Then there's still the youth position, and that can be from either the county or the city. And then we have the 2 members from schools. So it's going to has to go to city council committee meeting for approval before it gets implemented. But just in talking that with the way we're kind of going and into the future, that we wanted to change it and hopefully get some more input from everybody. So I thought that was really positive. And that was about it from last night.
Okay. Is there anything else? I don't see anything on the list. I'll just quickly go through some of the things I've done in September. Right at the start of September, and I asked Anne-Marie to be part of this too because it was at Dinosaur Park. There was a fellow by the name of Roger Vanini, who's a professor at the School of Communication and Culture. He's at Royal Roads University. He's a professor in the School of Communication and Culture and Canada Research Chair at Royal Roads. And he and his wife are doing a big 4-year fieldwork project on UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And so they were out at Dinosaur Park. They had talked to Barry and were looking for other people. They found a variety of people that they spoke to. They were there for the week. And they wanted my input and suggestions for somebody else. So I suggested that Anne-Marie and I meet with them. So we did that. And it's interesting to travel the world on other people's money and work on your on research. Because that's basically what they were doing, because they've been in all sorts of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And
But I think Drumheller, or I think Dinosaur Park did quite amaze them, and they've been to a lot of neat places. And where were they off to after this, Anne Marie?
Argentina.
Argentina, yes.
But they did Tasmania and they did Japan, all to check out World Heritage Sites.
Yeah.
I thought, oh shit, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, they were very, very ordinary people who, I have to tell this story on them. They were going to come out to our place to meet me out there, and they got hopelessly lost. I had the best directions. There's no way. They thought they were going to run out of gas, so then they really panicked and headed back to Brooks, and just it was all. They were quite embarrassed. It was hilarious, but anyhow, it was good because I had John home and he was cleaning up the yard and all sorts of things. It was great. You can stop now. They're not coming. So it was a bit of fun. The next week I went to, this is sort of nice, as an ex-board member of the Newell Foundation Board, I'd forgotten you get invited to the barbecues that they do for staff. Don't worry, won't be charging for this. It was just nice to go to Playfair and to Newbrook Lodge. And so both of those were nice functions for their staff, traditional annual functions. On Friday the 7th, Medicine Hat Campus on the Friday night invited a bunch of people there to announce that their social work program, they are teaching that program and it's not during the day, it's Friday night and Saturday for the next couple of years for people that are working or adults already that want to upgrade their education. And the course filled up very quickly, and the reason it was on a Friday night was the people from Medicine Hat were going to be there that teach it, and so they had a nice little announcement occasion and coffee and cake and visit. And it's good to see courses like that being offered at our local college. Joint services, you'll get those minutes. Last Friday there was another citizenship ceremony. There's about 2 a year, and there were 190 people. That was one of the biggest ones ever, from 40 different countries, I think they said. It's always neat, but yeah, it was a good day. Some of us went to the open house for elemental energy on Tuesday of this past week, and I've had some phone calls about that, talked to a few people mainly in I think it's called is it the High Ash subdivision, is that what it's called out there, Lionel? Yeah. Who feel they will be affected by that. So that's another one that we might hear more about. Of course, elemental is in the early days of looking at it, but yeah, that's sort of, I think. Next week there is a meeting of that collaborative network of educators and health people that are working on the whole mental health concept in our community and the needs. And I will be attending the Eastbrook reopening ceremony on next Thursday also. So, Anne-Marie, Ariana, could you let them know that, please? Thank you. Okay, let's keep going, and I think that's pretty much what's on our agenda. Before move into camera, Brian?
Well, I just wanted an update on information item regionalization, just how that discussion is going at joint services and what's evolved.
Just trying to, we have a meeting planned, which is exciting, I think. Kevin just told me this morning, on October 15th with Doug. And that will be at JBS Center. And is that, we need to choose how many people we're sending to that, or is that That's everybody's, that's, okay. So do we have any other details on that yet, Kevin? No?
No, I think it starts at 9, and I figure it's going to be a full day. It's in the flex rooms, the 15th. So you're supposed to let Amy Romans know who's going, and if you have any dietary restrictions.
And this is, will be all of the communities interested in talking, beginning the discussion of regionalization in our community. And the last we've, I think, I'm predicting that all the communities will be at that meeting myself. Just a prediction. But we had that joint services meeting, and I guess those minutes will usually come out later. Tracy forwards them to everybody, right? The joint services minutes or notes. So is that enough, Brian? Is that what you're thinking? October 9th, there's a beer and, is that right? There's a beer and burgers on the 9th, and Doug's on the 15th.
Yes, I've read what's in the papers and talked to a few people, but I was just curious from the people that have been at that joint services table with the other, what their impressions of the discussion and how it's gone. It's a very, I hope we keep it on the agenda as far as an update, and that we just get a regular twice a month update on where the discussion is, and if anybody has inputs as to just how we're progressing. I guess it's for us, it's going to be a pretty important part of our next few years, I think, and I'd like it to stay there and be the focus of our as an agenda item. I think we won't let it slip.
No, definitely not. And Sandra was there last this past meeting too. So she does great reporting on joint services. Enjoys the meetings. We're continuing to move forward though, as far as I'm concerned, and everybody who's wants to be at the table will be welcome to be there. And so the 15th will be a big meeting, I think. Okay,